Well, good evening and welcome to the COVID-19 pandemic update. I'm Kayode Okikelu. And first, the highlights. Kwara State government flags up mass vaccination campaign, launches mobile vaccination vehicles. The Taraba State Commissioner for Budget and Planning says its 2022 budget proposal is ready for any shocks which COVID-19 might bring. And Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel urges faster booster shot administration as COVID-19 infections rise to record high. Well, thank you for joining us on the program. It's getting increasingly harder to tell who might be infected with COVID-19 just on the face of it. So looking out for visible symptoms like coughing, sneezing, cold, and the rest is not enough because not every infected person shows symptoms. Well, the virus seems to be getting sneakier by the day, so we as well must be more tactful. How, you ask? By sticking to the same preventive measures. They never get old, so wash or sanitize your hands regularly, wear a face mask in public places, maintain physical distance, seek medical attention if you're ill, and stay at home. In the meantime, let's take a look at the latest COVID-19 figures.
No persons in Nigeria have been recorded as positive for COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. According to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, the latest figures were reported from 8 states and indicate a drop from figures reported 24 hours earlier. Rivers State had by far the highest number of infections with 52 cases. Kano State recorded 9 cases, Kebbi reported 6, while Kaduna and Plateau reported 5 cases each. Enugu had 3 cases, Bauchi and Lagos had 1 case each, and no new cases were reported from Sokoto State. The total caseload in Nigeria has risen to 213,403. 39 more people were discharged, bringing the total number of recoveries to 206,245. There were no additional deaths from COVID-19 complications reported in the last 24 hours, keeping the total number of deaths to 2,973. Currently, there are over 4,000 people on admission, while over 3.4 million samples have been tested. The latest update from the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency shows that more than 5.9 million Nigerians have received a first shot of the COVID-19 vaccine, while over 3.3 million persons have been fully vaccinated. Globally, more than 7.5 billion vaccines have been administered. In Africa, there are more than 8.5 million confirmed cases and over 221,000 deaths recorded across countries on the continent. And more than 255 million people all over the world have contracted COVID-19, while deaths are over 5.1 million.
Speaking of vaccinations, the Kwara State government has flagged off mass vaccination of residents of the state against COVID-19. The flag-off marks the beginning of the drive to get 50% of the adult population vaccinated by the end of January next year.
Come out to get vaccinated.
The Deputy Governor of Kwara State, Kayode Alabi, who is also chairman of the State Task Force on Immunization, calls it a renewed commitment to ensure that the effect of the ravaging COVID-19 scourge is minimized on residents of the state.
The scope of the COVID-19 vaccination expands through mass vaccination campaign throughout the state. I want to encourage all and sundry to ensure protection against COVID-19 by getting themselves vaccinated.
Close to 400,000 doses of the vaccine have been administered in the state, but more must be done to get 50% of the eligible population vaccinated before the end of January.
We are ramping up the number of centers that are going to be administering COVID-19 vaccine, public places, tertiary health facilities, secondary health facilities. And we're also going to be having what we refer to as the mobile vaccination vehicles. So these vehicles, you're going to see them moving around the city, especially places with high population, high volume, or hard to reach places. And they are going to vaccinate people that are eligible over 18 years.
The coordinator of the World Bank in Kwara State explains that vaccination is not 100% foolproof, but protects significantly.
I want to say that
The benefit of COVID vaccination, whether partial or full, is to ensure that in case you are further infected, the severity is reduced. In case you are infected, the rate of hospitalization will be reduced, and even the death rate will actually reduce. That's the benefit of COVID-19 vaccination.
Conveners remind those present that non-pharmaceutical measures are still effective in preventing spread of coronavirus.
So we're starting off preparations for the holiday season quite early, and what we have for you is vital information on how to celebrate responsibly so we don't end up with a surge in cases after the celebrations. We've been here before, so to speak, when the holidays came and the cases rose. But what's even more precarious about this period is the fact that we're battling the Delta variant of the virus with increased transmissibility and the ability to cause severe form of the disease, plus the possibility of new variants. So the stakes are much higher this time around. But as I said, we have some important information on how to conduct our activities before and during Christmas and New Year. Dr. Olaolu Aderiniola is the Deputy Director at the NCDC, and he joins us via Zoom this evening. Thank you for joining us on the program. So just to put this in context, Doctor, in proper context that is, what are the possibilities if we throw caution to the wind, as they say, because our daily cases are not as high as they used to be?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin, for having me now. Good evening to Nigerians. I think for Nigeria, we have history to look at. We know what happened last year. Towards a time we had this period, cases were low. But when we were now approaching December, cases increased because people started throwing caution into the wind. People were not using their face masks. People were not washing their hands. There was no physical distancing. And there was a lot of non-essential travels. There was a lot of gathering in close places and people not adhering to this. So this happened last year. And the essence now is that we've learned from history what happened last year. What can we now do? Those non-pharmaceutical interventions are still very important for us to prevent a spike and possibly also reduce it from the data that we have.
So I know the NCDC came up with some visual representation of what happened last year, the trends, and how we, got into another wave and the possibility this year. So can you just walk us through, because I think this might be quite important in previewing the future and knowing what to do so we don't get into that same trap we got into last time around.
Okay, so last year, with the case that we had the first case in, so the blue line actually shows the trend of the cases we had last year. It peaked at about June 2020, then it started coming down. So that's the blue line, and by the time it was October, November, cases were still low. But you see that where you have the start of second wave, that was the beginning of December, and cases started increasing with the festive seasons, and cases moved on. And if you now look at the red line, just at January, you can see that cases now peaked at the third week of January before cases started coming down. You can see that the cases here were even much more than we experienced in the first wave. By March, still looking at the red line, cases declined and were more or less stable till the peak, till the third wave now started by June this year, and it's now peaked in August. So cases are now coming down, and where we are now, looking at the 45th week, as at 14th November 2021, you can see that the cases we had here compared to what we had last year is lower. So we shouldn't assume that it will still continue this way, because the festive seasons are coming, people start moving, and if you look at our public places, people are really not adhering to the preventive measures, wearing their mask properly. People would enter the gates of probably a mall or an institution, they wear their mask, but once they get in, they drop the mask. It becomes a job mask. People are not using it. Washing of hands is not there. People are now hugging, shaking. So these are things we really need to ensure that we bring this attitude back so that we can get ourselves protected.
So let's try to do some more risk communication, if you may. So we're heading to what some people have called the inevitable fourth wave. And the case is different this time around. There's been some sort of vaccination. Yes, it's far from our target of 111 million, but we've done about 6 million, close to 6 million people have been vaccinated. So in light of that, what is a worst case scenario with a fourth wave, which people have said is inevitable anyway? What's the worst case scenario we're looking at?
Well, I think we now have a tool compared to what we had last year. There was no vaccine. And you see that with the vaccines, we could really use that to reduction in cases. But the thing is this, we need to do it all. Vaccine is not just the only silver bullet. It has to be combined with the non-pharmaceutical intervention. You can see what is happening in other parts of the world, especially in Europe. The vaccination coverage is much higher than we have in Nigeria, but the non-pharmaceutical interventions are not being adhered to again, and there's a lot of people coming in. It's now winter, people are now gathering, and you can see the cases now spiking. But one thing is that most of the severe cases are seen in unvaccinated persons. So there's still a lot of benefit being vaccinated, but that shouldn't stop other measures that we need to take. Physical distance is still important. Wearing our face mask properly, especially in enclosed gatherings, very important. Washing our hands, and at this period, non-essential travel, we still plead with people to not travel if it's not essential. And if they need to do, then all the non-particular interventions need to be done. Ensure that there's physical distancing. You can still be connected. We have Zoom and all our social networks so that we can have a good celebration with our loved ones, even as we prepare for the Yuletide season. But let's do it safely.
So clearly the message is not for people not to celebrate. It's just for people to celebrate responsibly. But you know what they say, doctor, a lot of people work all through the year just so they can, have that Yuletide period just to maybe spend all they have made or spend time with family, as it were. So if you could just help us to have a real life scenario, as it were. So people are planning to travel, definitely. They want to have, parties, they want to have gatherings and the rest. How should they go about this? Because as I said earlier, people will definitely want to celebrate for Christmas, New Year, and the rest.
So it has to do with travels. I think those who travel by air, the protocols are still adhered to. But at our parks, I think we had a meeting with the Federal Road Safety Commission so that motor vehicles are not jam-packed in this season. We still need spacing within the vehicles. People need to wear their mask as they travel. And in the parks, temperature checks should still be done. And the hand washing facilities should be there. Once you get to where you need to celebrate, you don't need to move about just everywhere. Wearing the face mask constantly is very important, especially when you enter an enclosed place, knowing that you're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting your loved ones. Even the vaccine that is available is still for adults. So children will most likely be at risk, and for some people, they may be infected and they don't even show the symptoms except they are tested. So we need everyone, our religious leaders, traditional leaders, to still pass the message across and try to persuade people, especially when they enter places where there are gatherings. Face masks should still be done. There should be limits to persons within a space. The spaces should be well aerated so that will limit the transmission.
Right.
Hand washing places should still be there, and hand sanitizers. I think what we've seen is that people would rather use a hand sanitizer than washing their hands. So to just have all these measures in place, physical distancing, no hugging, no shaking. Those are things that really need to be done so that we can reduce this and have a good Yuletide season and still be together. We don't want loved ones. Especially, we really need to protect the vulnerable persons persons 60 years and above, people have comorbidities, they are still with us. And since they are still here, we need to ensure that we prevent them from being infected.
Well, Doctor, we're winding down now in about 10, 15 seconds. Are there other variants of interest for the NCDC? We know that Delta variant is a big deal now, but are you monitoring any other variant in the country?
Yeah, so we still monitor, we still do our sequencing and it's sent to WHO through the platform. So this is gathered and with evidence, it's now determined whether we have another variant of concern, but the predominant one here is the Delta variant.
Well, Dr. Aderiola Olaolu, Deputy Director at the NCDC, thank you so much. It's been quite informative having you on the program.
Thank you so much.
Well, we'll go on a break now. When we return, we'll take a look at the situation in Europe, zeroing on France, Germany, and some other countries of interest. Do join us again. Hey, welcome back. Let's now take a look at how subnationals are recovering from the economic impact of COVID-19. In Taraba State, the government says the COVID-19 pandemic will no longer be a threat to its economy, and for that reason, it will not review its 2022 budget, as it has enough buffers. At a press briefing shortly after the State Executive Council meeting at the Government House in Jalingo, the state capital, Commissioner for Budget and Planning, Solomon Elisha, explained that instead of reviewing the budget, the government will be focused on completing all ongoing projects within the state.
A lot of businesses are gradually opening, so we expect a growth in the economy. In fact, the 2021 budget, the 2021 approved budget is to the tune of over 141 billion. And as I'm talking to you now, the draft that was being adopted by the State Executive Council of 2022 is to the tune of about over 146 billion, slightly ahead of the approved 2021. This is as a result of the gradual opening of the economy. COVID-19 cannot stampede us. We are people, we have IQ, and we should be able to walk over the challenges that has been brought to us by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Outside Nigeria now, as countries in Europe continue to come up with various measures to combat the fifth wave of the pandemic, France appears to be maintaining the status quo, unlike Austria, for example, where there's currently a partial lockdown, with a possibility that this might be upgraded to a full lockdown. So how is France planning to navigate this period, especially with infection threats from neighboring Germany, where cases are at an all-time high of over 68,000 daily? Well, let's speak with Alexander Martins Lopez, who's a French journalist in Paris. Good to have you on the program, Alex. It's inevitable, the fifth wave for France, same as other European countries. So what is that looking like really where you are, and how are people responding to that reality?
Well, there are two changes in the life of French people here. The first one is that the children in primary schools have to wear a mask again, and the people above 65 need to get another dose of vaccine. And the people above 50 as well will have to get another dose. Apart from that, nothing changes. People are not aware of this wave. So people are just getting tired a bit of the safety measure and are forgetting about keeping the distance between themselves, wearing the masks. And you see people in the streets embracing each other. And the most striking example of this is the way people say hello to each other. In France, we have a national hello, which is called la bise. When you see someone in the street that you know, you're going to give him or her 2 kisses on the cheeks. And that had totally disappeared during the pandemic because people understood it was dangerous. Now, you tend to see that in the streets. People are forgetting about how dangerous COVID-19 is.
Oh dear. Just painting that picture, I think it explains a lot, really. And I think it's a challenge, really, across the world. But now hearing that the government will not be imposing lockdowns, at least for now, must have come as a relief to a lot of people. And I'm sure that's why those greetings have continued. But what do you think is responsible for that decision by the government? And does it look like that might change maybe in the coming days?
It is indeed a huge relief for French people, and there is logic behind that decision. On Tuesday, there were registered about 20,000 new cases of coronavirus. The last time it happened in France was back in August. So you see a sharp rise of new coronavirus cases that is not followed by a sharp rise in people getting in the hospital. You only have a 10% increase of people going to the hospital. So the government is right by not implementing right now a lockdown. But it's really difficult to say what's going to happen. We need to wait for the evolution of the virus. What we can tell is that experts are a bit worried because of the weather. We are in mid-fall, winter is coming, and it's really cold. Now it's 0 degrees. During the morning, sometimes it's -1, -2. So people are more indoors. They might tend to not keep the distance between themselves, not ventilate the room, the workspace, and this might lead to an increase of coronavirus cases.
Do you think maybe, tourism considerations might have been part of the reason which the government maintained status quo? Because as we know, Paris, France generally, is a major tourist destination.
Exactly. It is one of the reasons, and we should not forget that we are in a presidential campaign. We have the presidential election here in April, next April. So the government thinks about this. They do want to implement something that is really unpopular. The lockdown here is really unpopular, and we've been hit hard economically wise. So the government knows that he shouldn't do this.
Interesting. So let's talk vaccination. About 70% of the population has now been fully vaccinated. Quite commendable. But seeing that the holiday season is here, technically, does it look like the population is well protected from the possible rise in infection rates, which is projected to usually follow seasons like this?
It's difficult to say, but people think that they are protected. And this is why they tend to forget how dangerous the COVID-19 is. Once again, you said that 75% are vaccinated, which is huge. But we do not need to forget that there are territories that are more vulnerable than others, and people forget that. For example, in the territories that belong to France, in the islands, such as West Indies, for example, Guadeloupe and Martinique, we have seen an epidemic tsunami, as what the French Senate said. And if the fifth wave comes in those territories, it will be very difficult and will have a medical catastrophe. So people need to not forget the safety measures, such as keeping the distance, wearing the mask, and of course, washing the hands often.
Just one more thing. This whole campaign, the vaccine mandates, has seen different reactions across countries. Looks like France is doing quite well with 70-75% vaccination rate. Just how did the country achieve that? And how are you combating those who still seem not to be going with the flow when it comes to vaccination?
It is indeed really surprising because France is known in Europe as being one of the most reluctant countries regarding vaccines. And I think it was due to compulsory measures. We have a health pass here. So if you are not vaccinated, you cannot do anything, any cultural activity, you cannot go eat in a restaurant, you cannot go watch a movie, be with your friends, or even play soccer. So I think it is a way of the government find to make people have the vaccine and accept it. And there is still a lot of reluctance here in France, even though we have 75% people who are vaccinated.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, Alexander Martins Lopez. I look forward to doing this soon. He's a French journalist. He joined us from Paris. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Also in Europe, after a ferocious debate, German MPs voted in favor of a new set of measures to fight the pandemic. These will include limiting access to public transport or the workplace to only people who have been vaccinated or tested. At the moment, just under 70% of the population is fully vaccinated, and that's below the EU average. There's more in the Global Update.
Germany's coronavirus situation is dramatic. Chancellor Angela Merkel has said, calling for a push to distribute booster shots faster and appealing to those skeptical of vaccination to change their minds. Early on Wednesday, Robert Koch Institute reported that confirmed cases had increased by 52,826 as the pandemic's fourth wave tightened its grip in Europe. With over 1,200 daily COVID-19 deaths in Russia, the government is considering mandatory QR codes. Most of Russia's 80-plus regions lifted a week-long workplace shutdown at the beginning of last week. It was designed to curb a surge in case numbers. The pandemic situation remains uneasy in Russia despite some improvement. With the world still in grip of the COVID-19 pandemic, Chinese scientists are accelerating the development of COVID-19 medicines. Tsinghua University, the Third People's Hospital of Shenzhen, and Brii Biosciences have jointly developed a cocktail therapy of monoclonal antibodies, which are derived from antibodies isolated from people who had recovered from COVID-19. Belgium has tightened its coronavirus restrictions, mandating wider use of masks and enforcing work from home as cases spiked in the country's fourth COVID-19 wave. From Saturday, all people in indoor venues, such as cafes and restaurants, will need to wear a mask unless seated, and the rule will apply to those aged 10 and older. Previous age threshold was 12. Nightclubs may have to test their guests if they want to let them dance mask-free. People wanting to eat in a restaurant or go to the theater already must present a COVID pass, showing vaccination, a negative test, or recent recovery. Most Belgians will also have to work from home 4 days a week until mid-December, and for 3 days per week after that.
And that's the program. But we have more updates for you, plus a better understanding of the pandemic on our website, channelstv.com. You can also get access to all of the stories, like President Buhari receiving the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, today, as well as other stories, all at your fingertips. And that's the COVID-19 update. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Don't forget to keep taking responsibility.